Coming up on today's episode of the Salesman podcast.
LinkedIn, cold email, the phone, it's all just another channel. So whenever anyone looks and they try to think that LinkedIn is this, silver bullet that's going to solve all their problems, I think they're getting unrealistic expectations. But what it is it is a channel and one that is extremely effective for B2B sales.
Hello, Sales Nation. I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman podcast, the world's most listened to B2B sales show. If you haven't already, make sure to click subscribe. And with that, let's meet today's guest.
Hey, my name is Jake Jorgovan. I am a LinkedIn lead generation expert and the founder of Lead Cookie. Excited to share some tactics with you guys on today's show.
On this episode with Jake, we're diving into how you can prospect for B2B deals over LinkedIn, the frameworks that you need to use, the initial outreach that you should do on there, the cadence, how many messages, whether you should follow it up with email calls, how you can essentially keep your account safe and not get banned for spamming too much if that's what your game is, which hopefully it isn't, and a whole lot more. So let's jump into the conversation. We're going to dive into prospecting on LinkedIn. I want to kind of align things up of the structure, perhaps any scripts, any tips we can give on that side of things. But to set things up, in a world of because I get these real terrible, cold, spammy emails that are just going out en masse at the moment, is LinkedIn perhaps where we should be looking to for a more sophisticated and more leverageable way to get in contact with people from a B2B prospecting standpoint?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that LinkedIn, cold email, the phone, it's all just another channel. So whenever anyone looks and they try to think that LinkedIn is this, silver bullet that's going to solve all their problems, I think they're getting unrealistic expectations. But what it is it is a channel and one that is extremely effective for B2B sales. So if you can't reach someone through email, and in the B2B world, a lot of times Facebook's kind of like inappropriate to go that. It's just more of a personal thing. So LinkedIn is definitely emerging as one of the top B2B channels for just anyone doing B2B sales.
And before we get into LinkedIn specifically, do you have any prerequisites or any ideas or data on cadence of, do you do a cold email, then LinkedIn, then call, or is it LinkedIn to get started with, just to set up the rest of the conversation about LinkedIn?
Yeah, it definitely, I look at it as just kind of like different channels. You have some people where you can't get their email, or you can't find an effective email for them, or it bounces back. And in those cases, you're going to start with LinkedIn. In other cases, you might do email prospecting and hit those people first through email, and then the ones you can't get, go to LinkedIn. So it's, I just look at it as, there's not necessarily one way is better than the other. I just look at them all as different channels to try to activate at different sequences of the process. You also have people who just never check their LinkedIn, and they might actually be responsive to email. So there's definitely no perfect way or perfect routine to hit them one spot or the other. I just definitely think, just using them as channels and attempting all angles until you can get through is just a really good place to go. And if you are emailing with someone, if you don't have the Sales Navigator like Chrome extension, just literally I just connect with every person that I'm emailing with, and it's just a simple thing, and that's going to also amplify your ability to further make that another touch point, kind of have credibility, and also just kind of remarket to those people with your LinkedIn content as well.
Cool. Well, we'll come on to credibility later on in the show. And just a final one, Jake, before we get real practical of all of this, and you don't have to agree with this, but I've said it before on the show, and I want to get your opinions on it. Is right now where we are recording this kind of beginning of 2019, is this potentially the golden age of B2B prospecting, in that getting someone's phone number, email address, there's plenty of tools to get all of that data. There's people are publicly pushing out their interests, what they're trying to achieve. If they're producing content even better on LinkedIn and other social platforms, is this the best time out of any time in human history to be able to connect with people?
I would say so. I mean, if you think about it, like years ago, if you were trying to go break into like a big enterprise company, it was kind of a crapshoot. Like you just didn't know who to go after. And LinkedIn, like it provides almost like a company directory these days that anyone in the world can see. And so, not every person's active, not every person posts, it's a self-generated network. But the way I look at it, and when I started in sales years ago, uh, it wasn't that simple. Or you look up a company, and you could tell that maybe 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 people were actually had LinkedIn profiles, and then most weren't even actually that active or up to date on them. So it definitely, I would say, has become like a golden age, and it's just emerging. I think it's going to get better and better.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to ask that, and clearly I feel the same way about all of this, is that I want the audience to be, and for myself, to be excited about this. This is an empowering moment, right? This is something that we should be excited about, and we should be eager to dive into, especially if all we're doing right now is perhaps cold calling people from a list, or emailing people from a kind of bought list from some kind of other organization. This is potentially differentiated, and in certain marketplaces, this is a true differentiation versus the competition who would just spam, 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 spam. So, with all that said, Jake, is there a structure? Is there a methodology to reaching out on LinkedIn to individuals?
It definitely is. So we've got a whole series of frameworks that we've come up with for really a handful of different situations. But the simplest framework, and I'll say, there's spectrums we can go toward with anything. So any of the approaches that I share today, you can go from let's do this unpersonalized and do a high volume of these, or you can take this and say, okay, let's personalize the intro of each one of these and still take the same approach. So everything I'm going to share can be done on either like a lower volume, highly personalized angle, or you could, we've, do sending like 100 of these a day in like a less personalized manner. So a lot of these can work in either angle. But some of the biggest frameworks that have worked really well is one of basically like all of them start with kind of a connection to just try to kind of establish the context of why you want to connect. So that's like the common trend across all of those, is to, in a connection request, give some sort of context. And the reason you want to do this, you don't just want to send a blank connection request, is there's so many people using these automation tools on LinkedIn these days. And so you want to give some reason that's actually going to be effective, or get them interested enough to actually connect with you and potentially have a conversation. Because the first piece of like doing any sort of LinkedIn outreach is like once they accept that connection request, then you have this ability to send them more messages. So it's kind of like if they don't accept it, then like the trail ends there, and you can't message them anymore through LinkedIn, and you've got to try other channels. So that connection request and just trying to get that first exception, that's like step number one in the process of actually sending outreach.
Let's stop here for a second, then we can go through the further steps, because there's a few questions that I've never really thought about before. First off, can you connect with someone more than once? In that, if they say no to a connection request, can you send another one in the future?
I don't believe so. As far as I know, it's we've definitely like withdrawn a connection request, and then you can resend it again. I think that's if it's unanswered. If they decline it, though, I don't believe it's going to let you send again. It's kind of one of the things that I'll admit we haven't ever been able to fully like test. But that is if they do, if they don't accept it and it sits there, you can withdraw and then retry to send it again. But really, if they're not accepting it, then like you don't have any other ability through LinkedIn to hit them again unless you go toward the paid in-mail route.
Because I've never thought about this before, but this might be a prompt, a kick in the ass to get people to customize connection requests, because I get tons of them where you can typically tell that it's someone who listens to the show. But a lot of times it's people who will randomly try and connect with me, and I'm going, well, they're not really a salesperson or a sales leader. Why do they want to connect? And there's nothing there. So I just decline it. And I've never realized that, well, that's them screwed then, because I'm likely never going to change my LinkedIn profile. I'm never going to, stop one and start another one. So say I've got no budget to spend money on anything for people to sell me stuff. But if I was the CEO of a decent sized organization, CFO, whoever I was marketing towards or selling towards, you're done, right? It's not like email where you can just send another email, send another one, or prompt another email, or here's some more value. LinkedIn is, it's almost, well, it's a positive thing that it does that, I feel, but I've never really thought about it like that before. If you're spamming LinkedIn accounts, that might be you done after 6 months of spamming them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, it definitely is an area where we want to be intentional with that. And so some of the the angles that work well is, I mean, if you are going to go highly personalized, finding something in their profile to mention, or some like media mention, like that always goes a long way if you go like highly personalized like that. Again, that's hard to do at scale. A way, even if you want to go higher volume with that, is we've seen a lot of success with, say, we have a customer in software development. They want to reach out to other companies that are like them, or like their customers, and so we'll do like vertical specific campaigns for them, where we'll say, oh, hey, HSBC or American Express are our biggest clients. I thought I'd reach out to connect, and so like giving that kind of social proof or some like industry specific context is a really good way to personalize, but still do that at a higher volume by filtering by keywords or industries, and then kind of semi-customizing like that is a good way to significantly increase your connection rate and still not have to personalize every single one.
Is there, or there must be, but I don't know what it is there a limit on how many connections you can make a day, how many you should be doing, and what, and I'll follow up with that with, is there anything else we should be doing to keeping our LinkedIn account in good standing?
Yeah, so the biggest things is, one, anything I share with you today, I would highly recommend having LinkedIn Sales Navigator for this. It's going to let you do higher volume and also get way more targeted in your searches. You also, if you haven't been majorly active on LinkedIn, you're going to want to ramp up to sending about 100 a day over time. Some people recommend higher. If you're going to be doing this day in and day out for a period of time, I recommend maxing at no more than 100 connections per day. I know some people go up to 185, but I've never safely felt doing that or safe doing that with our customers. So we cap at 100 per day, and we've never had any issues at that point. So those are kind of the main things to really kind of, I guess, to keep in. So ramp up over 2 weeks, cap out at 100 per day, and make sure you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And those things tend to keep all of our client accounts in good standing. We've had no issues as long as we follow those guidelines.
Good stuff. And final thing on this kind of phase of the process, and I'm putting you on the spot here. You may not have data on it. I don't know if I've asked this question a bunch of times. No one really has data on it. But when we talk about high volume, low customization versus low volume, high customization, is there a price point that it makes sense to shift from one to the other? Is it a case of they both perform the same with the same amount of effort, but essentially you're kind of closing, or you're getting more leads that are more qualified on one side and you're just playing the numbers game on the other? How does that work for the audience who perhaps don't want to experiment? They want to hypothesize the best way to go about it from the off-go.
Yeah, so we actually have like 2 tiers of our service. So we have like a light where we just send 2 messages, and then we have a premium where we do 4 messages. Then we even have we're putting out a kind of lower volume, higher personalization one. And the way that I always look at this is really like the size of your market. So we've got a customer coming on. They sell to insurance agents. Like, there is no shortage of insurance agents in America, which is their market. So I say, hey, 2 message sequence, and let's just go volume. You don't need high personalization in this. You just need a good, compelling message that you can get in front of lots of people. It's very much like the Aaron Ross predictable revenue model in that kind of sense. The smaller and more finite someone's market gets, like if they're saying, hey, we only work with Fortune 500 financial companies. Like if you're looking at like that, and you're looking at like people in innovation at Fortune 500 financial companies, it's like, okay, we've got a universe of like 500 people. In that case, like that is where you want to start going higher on the personalization. You want to start, actually putting more effort into that. You want to really segment and try to actually maybe like personalize each one you send out, because otherwise, if you go in mass, you could exhaust that in a week, and that way you wouldn't be making that great first impression. So that's kind of like the spectrum I look at, is really the size of the market you have determines how personalized you should go with it, and also the size of the sale, which those kind of tend to correlate with each other in most cases.
Do you have any thoughts on the deal size? We can use a SaaS model, perhaps, of kind of monthly recurring revenue. Is there any thoughts on monthly recurring revenue versus high and kind of high volume, low customization?
Yeah, the way I always look at it is, I say, if you're gonna do like I say about $5,000 like annual value. It's kind of the minimum of where you really want to sit if you're going to be doing these outbound tactics. If you're selling something and it's a lower price point than that, it becomes really hard to just make it a profitable in any sort of outbound manner. And really where these work is, the customers who are closing, 100K, 250K deals, and they are able to come to us once and they say, hey, we got even just, 2 deals this year out of this, and they're ecstatic because that's $500,000 for them. So the bigger the value is always the better, but I'd say $5,000 is the limit or the bottom end. And at that point, you're probably needing to go at a kind of a higher volume game to still make the economics and the time investment work.
Makes total sense. That is the best data and advice I've had on this from anyone. So I appreciate that, Jake. Part of
No
what I'm
problem.
asking here is from my own perspective. So we have a product called the Sales School. It's slowly evolving into, over the next 6 months to the next 12 months, just this software beast, which the audience don't see and the users don't see on the front end. But it's the first time I've ever managed a project like this. And it's gone from just video sales training to all kinds of stuff. The reason I ask all these questions somewhat selfishly as well for the audience is that we do the content sells it to salespeople, but I was always curious on deal size and market size of perhaps selling to CSOs or directors of VPs of sales. It seems like there's, and I wouldn't want to do this anyway, I guess, but it seems like there's no reason or opportunity to spam to those individuals. It should be relationship building, and it should be kind of, I guess, what we teach here on the Salesman podcast. So that was really useful. That was great. Okay, so step 1 is the connection, which I guess is almost like the email subject line, right? There's no point in writing an incredible email if we don't have a subject line which gets people to open it. What comes next in the pipeline of Cadence messaging and influencing to eventually perhaps get a phone call?
Yeah, so once you get them connected, there is typically a handful of approaches we come up with, and I'll share these frameworks with you so you can put this with the show as well. But like one of the standard ones that we'll often do is ask a probing question, and this works really well if you're talking with someone that is kind of in a market where they might be prone to talk. This probably isn't great if you're going to a C-suite person and they're not want to chit chat, but for you, say if you were reaching out to salespeople and you're trying to understand their problems or their pain points, it might be valuable for you to ask them a question, get them chatting with you. And through that talking, you're able to kind of then steer that conversation. One example, we had a software company that specialized in a certain programming language that was kind of up and coming. And so they reached out to the CTOs and they were like, hey, what are your thoughts on XYZ language? Are you guys using it, or how's your experience been? And man, like the responses, these technical people, like our team couldn't even understand them. We're just like, I don't even know what these words are. But it was great because it got these people talking. And so that is a really low pressure, great way to just get a conversation started on LinkedIn.
And just to clarify on this is a question to get a conversation going. Very literally that, no ulterior motives, not trying to bait someone into getting into the topic of software development, programming, whatever it is that we kind of sell. It is literally just to, if I'm interpreting this right, it's just to get a conversation going.
So there's, it's not like totally random. So like, there's always like some, like you're in the realm of your offer. One probing question I used to do was, hey, what are your primary lead generation channels at this moment? And so that would give me people, and they'd be saying, oh, word of mouth referrals, or we got really great PPC going, or, we don't really have anything going. Like, and so it was always, it is in the realm of your offer, because you eventually need to connect that to the offer through the conversation. So you're like teeing it up, a conversation surrounding your realm of your offer. We had one, which was like this marketing agency that specialized in blockchain, and was specializing in like blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And so we asked about like, the trends with basically like Facebook and Google banning like blockchain and cryptocurrency keywords and stuff like that, and like got tons of conversations going around that. So it's always like in the realm of your offer, but you don't just want to say like, hey, do you ever outsource software development? Like, like you don't want to be like so blatant that it kind of comes off bad. So
Yeah, and precisely that's what I was trying to get at, because regularly I get emails or LinkedIn messages about podcast promotion, or I don't know, stuff to do with podcasts and different products and services. And every time it's someone's connected, and then the first message is, "Do you want this?" And I just think to myself, well, if I wanted it, it's unlikely that you just caught me at the moment that I've had this incredible mental discovery that I need this product or service. It's very likely that I've researched, if it's top of mind, I've researched it, I'd probably have narrowed things down. There's a few people in mind. And so maybe you come into the conversation at that point. But when people do start a conversation with me, make me feel, maybe stroke my ego, whatever it is, make me feel good. And then it turns into a conversation about business and how they could potentially help me. It's a different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, and if someone reached out, like a good person in doing like some sort of podcast service outreach would be like, hey, love your show. I'm curious, like, how do you go about like producing that, or how do you handle like the show notes for the like, how do you like, are you doing that, or you have someone else handling it, or something? Like they're just asking a question about your process, and not just blatantly pitching you without having any idea if you're doing it yourself and it's painful, or if you've already got a company in place, kind of thing.
So how do we then transition from the conversation, or do we? How do we go from? Let me ask you a better question: is the end goal of all this to sell a product or to get a phone call?
So the end goal of all this really is to get them on the phone. You're not going to sell on LinkedIn. And it's something we always have to remind our customers. Our early customers would like write these essays back to people, and we're like, no, just like get a Calendly link in there and get them on the phone. Because the thing with like, if someone has only done like a lot of inbound sales or stuff, when you're doing outbound, like you have such a low level of trust. Like these people, like your LinkedIn profile builds a bit of trust. This conversation will build a bit of trust, but like very different than like referrals or inbound or like leads you get through networking. Like these people have no reason to trust you. And so like each message you exchange with them builds a bit of trust. Getting them on the phone builds a bit of trust. So like the end goal with LinkedIn that I always look at is to like get a booking widget in there, something like Calendly, and then get them on a call. That's really kind of the step you eventually want to move them toward, is to converse, identify a pain, or wait until they show interest and then be like, hey, let's hop on a call to talk more. That's kind of the goal of where you're trying to get this to in the LinkedIn conversation.
And before we get into how we make that transition, to frame up timeframes with this kind of thing, Jake, how long will you leave it? How many email or how many messages will you go before you go, okay, this individual isn't for us?
Yeah. So again, that definitely depends on, again, the high volume, low personalization piece. Like I said, if we're targeting insurance agents, we're gonna send a connection request. We're gonna send one message. If we don't hear back, like we're probably gonna, we probably won't go more unless they're really, really hungry for it. But like honestly, they're better off probably just putting that offer in front of more people, because they're in someone who it really resonates with right out of the gate. Personalized approach, or so like higher value, I would definitely say you want to send at least 4 messages through LinkedIn. You could do more if you're going on the personalization route, but if you're doing it in mass, I don't recommend going more than 4, or you get a little bit unsafe if you're sending the same messages over and over to volumes of people. But our service, we regularly do a 4-step drip sequence at a pretty high volume, and that tends to work pretty well. But what I do tell our customers is like, that's kind of they're not responding at all. They haven't said anything, like 4 messages. Once someone raises their hand and shows interest, I'm just like, you just stay on them. Like if they raise their hand and they have interest at some point, like stay on them. Because the thing about outbound and doing this kind of stuff is you may not hit people at the right buying cycle. So, they may be like, oh yeah, I'm interested in your services, but they're thinking, for that project that's not coming up till Q4. And so if someone like raises their hand, they show their interest, I'm just going to keep trying to get in front of them, probably at a high frequency at the start, and then literally like on a, monthly or a minimum quarterly cadence of trying to get in front of them again.
And how do you track all of this? I guess, including Sales Navigator. Let's assume everyone should have Sales Navigator. Sales Navigator, LinkedIn sponsored the show for other products, and they haven't sponsored this podcast for Sales Navigator. So I'll send them this clip as something that essentially everyone listening to the show should have, as a free plug for the service, because it is good. assuming everyone has Sales Navigator, how do we manage our contacts, our cadence? How do we keep on top of all this? Especially perhaps we're not doing 100 messages a day, new outbound, but say we're doing 10 to 15 a day of customized ones. How do we stay on top of all of this? Because soon builds up, right?
Yeah, that if LinkedIn listens to the show, I will ask them to please make a better CRM inbox. Like they've got this great recruiter tool to like organize candidates, but the sales side of things, it's just I'll admit it's not strong. Another angle that I've seen people take is using the tags feature within LinkedIn. So that is a very powerful thing where you can say like interested prospect, and you can put a tag on someone's profile. And that way you can then kind of go and sort those and see lists of those over time. But for how powerful Sales Navigator is, for what it does, it's great for searching and finding people, but they don't have great tools built to nurture people over time at this moment. But some of the things they do have is you can save people as a prospect, and then you have your normal LinkedIn feed, and then you have your Sales Navigator LinkedIn feed, and that's going to literally just give you updates from the people you save as prospects. That's a very cool feature to kind of comment and try to nurture people over time and like comment on what they're sharing and everything.
Yeah, it seems like with the purchase of LinkedIn by Microsoft and Microsoft working on their own CRM systems, that eventually at some point it'll all coincide and collide into this incredible product. Clearly we're not there yet, because I have problems tracking what the heck I'm doing on LinkedIn, and I'm doing one message a day, if that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's got to happen some point. They'll make a better like CRM version of it, but right now it's good for the sales side, but it's really hard on the nurture side to keep organized in LinkedIn alone. So we use this really simple tool called Airtable, which is basically like a spreadsheet. I've seen other people literally just kind of copying over the profiles to a Google Doc and organizing that. But I use Pipedrive for my main CRM. So there's like, just as long as you have some system, but I wish I had a great solution for that, but it's currently not built in. So everyone I know is kind of hodgepodging it in some way.
Yeah, genuinely, if anyone, because a load of entrepreneurs and individuals of that ilk listen to the show as well as the B2B sales professionals, that is a product that if you get it right, Microsoft will buy in 12 months from now if you just do the job for them. But as a kind of a going off topic, because I could probably talk about that all day, Jake, with you. But on about the nurture side of things, you brought up something important here, and this is something that LinkedIn does better, far better than just doing this over email or cold calling or whatever it is, dropping by people's offices. How do we integrate nurture through content that people are liking, sharing, and commented on? Does that filter into does that fit into your model here of we send 2 or 3 LinkedIn messages, and then on our LinkedIn Navigator homepage, we see that individual has just posted something? Do we then include Cadence in commenting on things like that? Or do you feel like that perhaps doesn't have as much impact as what we think it does and what we've been kind of told it does as kind of social selling takes over the globe?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is like getting active on your own content on LinkedIn, especially if you're using it for these tools, it is massive. And I learned this firsthand because for the first like year of running Lead Cookie, I was just so focused on getting really good at the outbound game. I wasn't actually posting much content on LinkedIn. And over the past 4 months, I was like, all right, like let's start to look at the other side. I've been doing really good on the outbound. Let's start to do content. And so I started posting daily content on LinkedIn, and it's like it has been insane. And for like a number of ways. One, I started to see tons of referrals, literally coming from people I don't even know, that would just like see my stuff. I started seeing leads on our website, literally coming from people that were just like saying, hey, I follow your LinkedIn updates. And I even started to see like leads from like college acquaintances and like people in like way old like business ventures and everything coming through as leads. And then also the other really, really interesting thing, and where I really saw the value, was I saw people I'd had sales calls with who didn't buy, comment on my stuff, and then come back to me and buy. And that was like, okay, like this is like this trifecta of referrals, new leads, and nurturing leads that weren't ready to buy at the current time. Seeing all those together made me realize how important content is to the game of this, of like nurturing those over time. And we've seen that for our customers who are really active and posting on LinkedIn. Definitely, they get more out of this. They appear more as thought leaders. So their outbound also performs better because people check out your profile before they talk to you. So I can't like say enough on the content piece, and that's literally become a part of our service now. That's just been making a huge difference.
And what is the cadence on this? Is it every day? Is it once a week? And obviously, LinkedIn's algorithm is changing all the time, so there's no real good answer to this by the time someone listens to this show in 12 months from now, Jake. But if you had to give someone a general rule, what's the cadence of content to post to not necessarily give you thought leadership of a whole industry, but to make you appear as a real person as opposed to some spammy individual that may not be even like a real account?
Yeah, so I'd say maximum post once per day because I think otherwise, like I've seen people that post multiple times per day, and they may be getting more stuff out there, but when actually I look at their stats compared to the stats that I get, even though they have more followings, they're getting less impressions and less clicks because like, LinkedIn's algorithm's only going to prioritize one of those for most people. If you post multiple in a day, and anytime I post multiple in a day, typically one of those gets more engagement than the other. And it's just because it's like they're not going to put two of your posts back to back in someone's feed. So once per day maximum, and then I'd say minimum you want to do like minimum people should be aiming for 2 per week. And so like, it's really like the biggest thing that I think most people don't realize is like just use the stuff you already have. Like if you've got blog posts, if you've got content, or you've got case studies, even just like sharing the stories and the stuff you have. Like it never ceases to amaze me how many of our customers have never posted anything on LinkedIn. And then we go interview them and they have this just like archive of content or case studies or portfolio work and like behind the scenes photos. And I'm just like, okay, well, we've got enough content for 2 years here and you've never once posted any of this to your LinkedIn. So just getting something out there is the most important thing. Don't just blatantly sales pitch, but just delivering some value and just putting stuff out there keeps you top of mind. And that's the most important part. The stuff I put out, I'm never pitching our services, yet it's consistently generating leads.
And for everyone who's listening who works for any decent size enterprise or larger organization, just go to the marketing department. That's literally what they're there for, to give you stuff to post. This might evolve over time. It might become more and more customized for you, if it's an image or if they help you do some filming for videos or whatever it is. But that's literally what you're making their life easier by using your profile rather than using some stagnant corporate profile that nobody cares about. Is there anything on this front then, and we'll kind of wrap up with this, Jake? Is there anything that I feel like we've covered all the bases here. Is there anything counterintuitive that we should be doing? Is there anything that we perhaps shouldn't be doing, which is harming our results? Is there anything that you kind of like want to add to wrap up the show?
Yeah, so I'll really quickly dive. So we hit like I mentioned like the probing question approach, and so that's like 1 out of 7 approaches, and I'll share this with you as well. But the some of the other ones like will offer a free resource or like a really compelling case study. For certain companies that have like a portfolio, like software development or design firms or agencies, will offer like, would you like to see our portfolio of work? Or people that are in startups and new businesses or launching new products, like we'll do market research and say like, hey, would you mind providing feedback on this new thing we're building? And that one works really, really well too. But I share like all of those at a high level, but the one takeaway that I'll share is that the direct pitch is consistently the lowest performing script that we use. And we pretty much in 95% of cases, we will not use it. We use it occasionally when customers like insist on using it. And we've hardly ever seen it perform great. Like you have to have typically the direct pitch works only really well when you're targeting like C-suite people and you have a great value proposition. But in most other cases, we have always been able to outperform a direct pitch with any of these other kind of like value added conversation starting, casual approaches. Has always performed better than just going out and pitching people, which is what almost everyone else does. So,
and final thing to follow up on this is LinkedIn, and this is probably a conversation for another time, depending on your answer, Jake. But is LinkedIn purely for prospecting, Or can it be used by account managers and people who want to nurture accounts and grow them over time? Is it just the front end of the sales process, or should we be considering it as a tool to use throughout the sales process and beyond?
I will say I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I am definitely more of the hunter type, so I can't say that I use it as much on like the farming or account management. That's just never the role that I've been in as much. So uh, I'll 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 have to respectfully decline on as probably the expert to answer on that, and I know it more from the hunting aspect.
Well,
So
I'll put it in perspective then. So if we're doing what we discussed in this episode of doing that initial outreach, we've got Cadence. We're doing the research. We're reaching out to the correct people with an appropriate message and get a conversation going. We are posting 2 pieces of educational content a week. We're not kind of pitching in the post. Well, if someone does a deal with you and they're seeing that content after the fact and they're still able to engage with you, and rather than picking up the phone or going through perhaps customer services to get an answer solved, they can just ping you an email over LinkedIn, which is going to be, or a message over LinkedIn, which is going to be far quicker than going through the traditional routes of telephone trees and all this kind of stuff to get, if you're in an account management role, like when I was, where I would both hunt and farm my account to medical device sales. LinkedIn wasn't really kind of a player when I was kind of back when I was doing it, but I feel like that would be a real powerful resource, and you're already all doing it. And so, if you take this approach, and so I think for account management, it just fits in super nicely. I wouldn't think you'd have to do too much different, and I think you just have tremendous effects from it as well. So,
yeah,
and I appreciate the candid answer there. It's refreshing to get someone to say, "I'm not sure."
yeah, the one thing I'll share that I think is useful is whenever you're kind of like trying to, I guess, like land and expand within an account. When I've done more enterprise sales, like those sales calls where you got your contact and then he brings in like 3 new people and you're like,
Yep.
I don't know who these people are, and you can go research them, and like you may not even get their emails or be on the email thread, which would make it kind of like unkosher for you to go like email those contacts, but some of those might be decision makers or new departments that you want to get into. That's where LinkedIn is like a great spot to like jot down all their names, look them up after the call, add them, and now you've got like a line of communication that's a lot more kosher to have that like conversation and everything through.
Yeah, what we need, and if it doesn't exist now, I'm sure it will do not too in the not too distant future, is some kind of dialing software that does voice recognition that just pings us stuff up in real time when someone joins on a phone call. Because I've been tripped up before of thinking I'm dealing with one individual and it's a conference call that's really awkward because I have no idea who anyone in there is. And obviously a bit of prep beforehand for my part would have solved the problem. But yeah, that's we're just creating products and services throughout this episode, Jake. There's 15 businesses have come from this one. But with that, mate, I've got one final question to ask everyone that comes on the show. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self and give him one piece of advice about how to essentially improve his sales skills and his ability to win business that has nothing to do with LinkedIn, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing I would say is that like just to learn every single day and just like make it a habit of studying every day. In some aspect, I am studying sales, marketing, psychology, persuasion in some aspect every single day. That's like for even just for like 10 minutes. And that is a habit that I have put in place now for well over a year and a half. Versus I used to kind of just do it ad hoc. And that has made a massive difference in so many different ways. So just the act of like literally daily learning, and the stuff that I even put on my LinkedIn content, I literally do this process. I learned this from a program I'm in called Wake Up Warrior, just daily discover and declare, which is I learn something and then I write it and I post it on my LinkedIn, what I learned. And that's where my daily LinkedIn content comes from, which actually nurtures that. And that's how I just learn and level up as a salesperson and a marketer every single day.
And how do you do your learning and how did you implement it as a habit?
So it's literally first thing in the morning. What I found is I do very well with video training. So literally, while I just like wake up, I roll out of bed, I make my coffee, and I just sit down and I turn on typically about like 15 minutes of video training and drink my coffee, and that's like how I start each of my mornings. And then literally by the end of the 15 minutes, drank at least 1 cup of coffee. My brain's somewhat working, and then I kind of teach back what I just learned. So that's literally kind of the process, and just making it the first thing in the morning makes it pretty easy to always get done.
Seamless. We talk about on the show a lot the difference between someone who has business acumen, someone who has industry knowledge. 10-15 minutes a day for 12 months in a specific vertical is all you need to really stand out against the competition, and tying it into having a coffee. I love coffee and enjoy it. So I try and tie my habits in, or new habits into drinking a coffee or preparing a coffee. And it enables me to kind of stay focused and get it done. So I appreciate that, Jake. That was really valuable for the audience. And with that, for anyone who wants to, well, there's going to be two groups of people. There's going to be one group going, I'm going to implement all this right now. And there's going to be a bunch of sales managers going, I would love to implement this right now, but I don't have time. Tell us a little bit about Lead Cookie, and for those individuals who don't have time to implement this but want the benefits of it, how you can help them.
Yeah. So basically, our business Lead Cookie, we are done for you LinkedIn lead generation services. So we've got a service of basically handling the outbound, doing all that for you, and basically just we hand you warm conversations on LinkedIn. And we also have a service where we basically do daily or just a few times a week content for your LinkedIn feed to nurture your existing customers and past connections and everything as well. So those are the two primary services that we offer. And we really, when people go try to do this themselves and they get overwhelmed and they don't have time, that's when they come to us. But I got a ton of content on there as well on the website on just how to do all this stuff on your own. We teach it all, give it all away. And if you need help doing it, that's where we come in.
Perfect. Well, I'll link to the website. I'll link to your LinkedIn profile as well if anyone wants to connect and use osmosis to kind of suck in how you're doing things and the cadence of things and the content. I think that'd be useful for the audience as well. And with that, Jake, I want to thank you for your time as always and for joining us on the Salesman podcast.
Thanks for having me on here.